Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to Storytime. I am excited to introduce you to today's guest, Mr. Greg Redden. And, I've known him for several years, and he is one of those people who is always behind the scenes, making people smile, making people laugh, lifting a helping hand, and ready to support. Well, at this stage in his life, he is ready to support in a bigger way. And I wanted him to share that story, that side of the equation with you. So today's story time, you're going to get to meet my friend Greg from Taylor, Texas, who's actually running for city council. So we're going to get into all the bits and pieces and learn about who he is, what he does, and what it means to him. Today's title is if it is to be, it's up to me. And how many times in our life have we thought somebody should do something? Somebody should do something. Well, sometimes that somebody is you. And today we're going to talk to Greg about that. So, Greg, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's running for city council. It had crossed my mind a lot, but I was like, no, I don't want to do it. Yes, I want to do it.
Yeah.
And my lovely bride said, have you prayed on it yet? And I'm like, well, no.
Yeah.
And she wanted to go, why have you of all people, haven't you prayed on it? I'm like, I don't want to know the answer.
Yeah.
And how many times have we always prayed for God to get us out of situations, but never really prayed for him to get us into a situation?
Yeah.
So I prayed on it.
So I love that. I remember when you told me that story that I don't want to know the answer, because you knew that if it had been in your heart,
yeah,
you probably already knew the answer.
I did know the answer.
You just didn't want to give him permission to hammer that answer on you, right?
That is so true. I mean, we take a hard look at ourselves, and when we want to find the answer out, we know what the answer is anyway. So you might as well just talk to the man and say, all right, give me direction now, instead of giving me an answer. But I got the answer that morning.
How
really
fun.
hard.
How fun. Well, Greg, you've been in the community for a long time, and this is not the first time that you have hit the streets and that you have done a campaigning, because when your beautiful bride was running for judge, you were her, what did she call you?
I was her wingman.
Her wingman. Yes. And everybody really, I feel like since you opened the storage place in Taylor, you've been involved in the chamber, you've been involved in Rotary, you've been involved in American Legion, and people have gotten to know you. But I feel like they really got to know you, or at least got to see you on a regular when Rhonda ran. And I feel like Greg ran at the same time.
I did. There was a lot of times that people would go vote, and they'd look at Rhonda and says, I voted for your husband today. And she'd go, oh, thank you. And it's like, boy, they're going to be surprised if they come to court and see me here.
Like you've got your own bench.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we do in our world with Unbreakable is we really talk about that bond between husband and wife, and to see you guys model a beautiful bond like that together is amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, when they see the unity that you bring to the table, I had this conversation earlier today about women and our role with supporting men, and the men is the man is the protector, the provider, all of those types of things. And sometimes we can provide in different capacities and all that, but to see it modeled out in the way that you two show up is just absolutely beautiful. And so I just want to honor you in that. And Rhonda.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think examples are, well, they say more is caught than taught, and they catch you out there living it and being that living proof. So we talk about foundations, we talk about, the core, and I would love to hear from your perspective, running for city council, and all of the work that you've done. What do you think is the foundation of a good, strong community?
It's got to be the people itself, because I've walked probably 90% of District 1 already. I've talked to some great people. I've listened to what their concerns are. Yeah. And one of the things that we talk about is the road and the foundation of the road, which is what we talked about. Everything in life has to have a foundation. You got to have a foundation that you can build upon. Our issues here, being an older city, is our infrastructure with our water lines and our sewer lines and the roads themselves. If we don't build on the foundation and work it that way, everything we do is just going to be a patch, and it'll always fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you bring a human element to that as well, right? When we talk about foundations, obviously the road, one of my favorite scriptures is you can build your house on shifting sand or on the solid rock, right?
That's correct.
And our roads may be the solid rock, but the people are what build it, and the people are what really matter in this. And as I work with a lot of people through our Unbreakable Enterprises, we talk about a foundation, and it's based on 7 pillars and self discovery all the way to purpose.
Yeah.
And I think about our community and the city of Taylor, that we have our own unique identity, right? We
We
have
do.
our own unique, processes in place. We've got those defining moments in life. We've got our beliefs and our mindsets. We've got our own unique identity. We also have a pretty cool purpose, right? Of building strong families and a community that is self-sufficient. When I look at the ability for students to get an education in Taylor, go off to school, and then come back
Okay.
and work that, right? So tell me a little bit about what you see as, okay, we've got the ground. We know the infrastructure is incredibly important, but what are the human elements that you deal with?
The human elements talk about, with some of the people I talk to is connecting District 1 to the other districts.
Mm,
And I've looked at some of the plans that the city wants to do with the long-term financial plan and everything. And I'm like, why are we building a sidewalk in this area? Why don't we build sidewalks to bring both communities together, everybody
mm,
downtown, and bring it for the heartbeat of the town to be around the new city hall that's going to be built?
yeah,
Because a lot of times things are put into place that, even though there's new management and new people in place, it's still there. We got
sure.
to work with what we were given. So let's bring everybody in. So there's so much stuff that goes on in Taylor. The car show, fireworks, the 4th of July, the rodeo.
Mhm.
Let's bring roads to bring everybody in. And those will be the veins and the avenues to bring people in from all sides, all 4 districts into downtown
Right.
to be one community. And that's what, really God wanted. He wanted us to all be one community working with everybody and
Yeah.
helping everybody
Yeah.
out.
What do you feel like is a deterrent to that?
To doing it, we don't always get the best people to run, because I've seen some of the stuff on Facebook that goes out there, and I'm like, this is crazy what people
Mm,
will say. You know, I've talked to a lot of people. I've traveled all over the world with when I was in the Marine Corps, and I've come to find out that everybody in the world has 80% in common.
yeah.
That's a B, that's passing grade. It's the 20% that separates us.
Yeah.
Well, that 20%, we can't have it be as toxic that it's been
Sure.
in our history. So let's work on the stuff that we have in common to
Hmm.
build as we
Hmm.
move forward.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I just actually, it's so funny. I had this conversation twice today already about the fact that as humans, we all have basic needs,
Yes.
right? We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to know that we matter, we want to know that we can contribute, we want to be fed, and we want air in our lungs,
Yes.
right? But what would you say are some of the commonalities that you see? And we don't have to get into the differences. If anybody wants to know differences, go to the community page.
Yeah.
Like, you can find the differences if you want to. But so many times I feel like people get hung up in the differences that they forget about the common ground.
That's true. We everything can be red or blue. It's not about being red or blue. It's about being human. A
Yeah.
lot of people ask me, how is it that I have my signs all over town
Mm.
in everybody's yards, from
In
Republicans to
every
in,
district.
in, in every district? I said, well, when you're a true servant of the people,
Yeah.
people understand that, and they go, this is somebody that's not doing it for himself.
Hmm.
Because truthfully, I have no personal agenda to get anything out of being a city council. It's for my own personal gain.
Sure.
I'm doing this because in 10, 15 years, I want people to go, what a great community, what a great town, what a fun place to be. And there's always something going on. There's a
Yeah.
heartbeat in Taylor that I've seen in the decade I've lived here,
Mm.
that everybody should be able to enjoy and everybody should know about it. And so that's what I want to do. I want to be able to bring those people together and bring people in
Mm.
to understand that our differences aren't that much.
Right.
It's just that small, minute area that we disagree in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and our differences a lot of times aren't necessarily bad things, and we spoke about the word earlier. And the word talks about the body has many members and many parts,
Yes.
right? And one of my favorite things that we have this guest pastor at our church, and he talks about the uvula or something like
Yeah.
that little flap, right? In the back
Yeah.
of your throat. He's
Yeah.
like, nobody says, oh, I love that, right? It's
Yeah.
so sexy or whatever, but it's important. You
Yeah.
can't swallow without it. Or the big toe, like,
Yeah.
so
It's balance.
those
Yeah.
different, yeah, like, whoops, I fell over. My toe didn't show up for work today,
Yeah.
right? But those pieces of us, a lot of times people feel like, that we're different, so that we have to be divisive, or we're different, so we have to, show our differences and make sure that that's known and that thing exists. But the truth is, what if we came together? What if this community was really focused on that unity, that bringing people to the center and having that legacy piece, right? You talked about legacy, as you said, the community for future generations. That's legacy.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that's not in the business world. Obviously, you're in business and we're in business, and we understand that in business, we want a return on investment. We want to see something now. But for a long term, we want legacy. We want to know that something can sustain past us. We want to know that I can plant a seed in the ground today, and somebody 100 years from now is going to sit under that branch.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I do a lot of stuff. One of the things that I've done in knocking on doors and stuff is I've met a lot of veterans,
Mm,
and I'm able to connect in with the services that we have in Taylor, because people didn't know that.
sure.
But we talk about the planting of seeds, and I think it's, what's the word? 17 times the seed has to be planted for somebody to see it, and we never really get to see the completion
Mm,
of that seed. For Christians, you don't keep score.
yeah.
It's not the fact to keep score. You may end up, at the end of your life and realize all these people are to thank you after you pass. But the other day, I went to lunch with some friends of mine, and her husband was in the Navy, and I had actually got them set up with the same lady here in Taylor about services.
Okay.
Well, Jesse passed,
Mm,
and so um, I didn't, and I knew Jesse passed. I went and spoke at his funeral and everything. But we were having lunch with Rhonda, and she goes, "You started something a year ago," and I'm like, "Uh-oh, what did I do?"
yeah.
Well, she said, because of what I did by connecting them with service, they actually were able to take Jesse's cancer and move it to Rhonda's account. And so now Rhonda gets a stipend from the military for her
Mm,
husband passing for 100% for being 100% disabled from his veterans
benefits.
service
Yeah.
connected. But the main thing is, because she's 100%, she doesn't pay taxes on her house.
Wow.
And now she'll never lose her house due to taxes.
Sure.
And she's telling me the story, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I said, I feel like I'm going to cry. I said, this is so beautiful. I finally get to see something that I started and didn't
Yeah.
even know. So,
Yeah.
to me, that's one of the most incredible things about when you're out here talking to people, that you may connect them to something or somebody that you'll never see what happens, but
Mhm.
they will remember that.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we never know the full impact that we make, and whether it's good or bad. A lot of times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A positive word is a beautiful impact. It could propel somebody into a whole new trajectory of life. A negative word could create limitation and walls that keeps them trapped, right?
Yes.
We talked a little bit earlier about being trapped and confined in a glass jar.
Yes.
And you think about, we don't know, everything that we do produces something, everything we say produces something. And so when it comes to the work that you do, right, with American Legion, the work that you do with Rotary, and now the work that you're planning to do
For
with
the
for the
city. Yes.
city, yeah, it's truly a life of service. And I feel like that's in your blood, from the Marine Corps to all of the areas that you're touching now. And what does that mean to you? I don't know that we talk a lot in today's time about core values, but obviously leading with service has to be in one of your top 5. Like, I just have to say, because your life models that. But what does that mean to you to be of service?
I always tell people I don't know what my spiritual gift is. And I was having a conversation with Pastor Davis,
Mm,
and I told him that, and he started laughing. I said, "What's so funny?" He goes, He goes, son, your spiritual gift is truly service,
Yeah.
giving back to others. And the fact that I can bridge the gap with so many people and so many diversities is, I think, will help me
Mm.
do the job here for the city and the citizens of Taylor, because that's truly what I'm doing this for. I'm doing it for the citizens and everybody that comes to Taylor to enjoy what we have to offer and to find out what the heartbeat of Taylor truly is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think sometimes sometimes people have a hard time discovering what their gifts are because it's so common to them, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's so funny, and without knowing it, a lot of times we end up finding ourselves in imposter syndrome because we're thinking, I just really wish I had that gift over
Yeah.
there. I really wish that, maybe God would use me or somebody would place me in this role or this position. And yet at the same time, you've got this shining beacon within you that nobody can even touch because that is like your gift and that just oozes
Everybody else
out of
sees it
you.
but you, but
Yes.
that's what we do as humans. We don't
Yeah.
look at ourselves
Yeah.
the way we should, and people see it in us that we don't see it, but they do.
Yeah. But what if you did? What if everybody that was in your reach because of you potentially, because of this interview potentially, what if everybody started self-discovering and really identifying what they were created for? How different do you think this world would be if people really just knew who they were?
I, I think it'd be great. I told somebody the other day when I was talking to Janet Curtis, and I said, I wish we could see what God sees.
Mhm.
Looking at, and I was talking with Stacy Stork. I said, Stacy, your compassion that you have for everybody. I said, I wish people would look at you and go, your compassion is so bright today.
Mm.
Instead of the exterior that we all see,
Right.
the interior of somebody's heart, that truly is what the person and who that person is. And if everybody saw that, I kid around with Rhonda. I said, yeah, and I said, I said, I love you so much. You're so gorgeous. And she goes, whatever. I said, yeah, but if you would see me through your eyes, you'd be going like, what am I doing with him?
Well, I think we would all probably do that if we could really see things from that lens. I had a dream several months ago, and in this dream, my mom had passed. My mom truly did pass away in October of 23. But in this dream from a couple of months ago, I saw her. And it wasn't the sick version of her, or even the version of her that she had dealt with some mental illness. And this is my mom from Kansas. Um, it was a whole, healed, light, full of life, smiling version of her. And I woke up from that dream and I'm like, oh my God, I think I just saw my mom the way God sees her. And that changed everything for me, just having that lens to be able to say, wow. And who else is he going to give me the ability to see the way he sees, right? I jokingly on a podcast a couple of years ago said, I see people. And like, I like, not like a freaky, I see people like from that movie.
Yeah,
Like I see dead people. No, it wasn't that, but I see people. And I feel like that is a gift. And to be able to see someone in their humanness and in their ability and their desires and the things that God really created them to be. But what if we could all see each other that way? What if we could all get back to that 80%? And I love your vision of unity. Greg, that's huge. And I think you embody that as well as you go from one place to another. Like just in our conversations that we've had recently, I listened to how you say, I was over here visiting with this person, and then I was visiting with this person, and then I talked to this person. You're creating a sense of unity that nobody else is dealing with, and the enemy of this world wants to create division. The enemy of this world is doing everything that he can to divide families, to divide relationships, to divide communities, because a divided house cannot stand, right?
Exactly.
But you're doing the unity piece. Keep doing it.
I'm going to go out there. I'm still going to be here after the election, before the election.
Yeah.
I'll be out there talking to everybody, and I'm going to continue to give back to the community because this is where we live, and I want people to understand what we have in Taylor is great, but it can be better.
Mm-hmm.
We can bring in businesses and families and stuff to be able to go to all the different churches here. And it doesn't, my grandmother once told me, she came to me before she died and stuff, and I was home on leave, and she goes, your brother's going to the Church of Christ.
Oh.
And I'm like, Grandma, he's getting fed. Isn't that great that he's going back to church? She goes, well, I'm just not talking to you right now. But, we've got so many different, we got the churches, but we got Christ in the center of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And as long as we build from there,
right.
let's get fed and let's come together and share a meal with everybody.
Oh, I love that. I believe you should have one of those tables at the middle of downtown Taylor, and you should have like a gather dinner or something. Just
Yeah.
bring people to the table, bring them to the table, right? Have you thought about this? I wonder, have you thought about what is one of the first things that you want to do to celebrate this victory?
The first thing I want to do is I'm basically going to say, I'm going to thank God and everybody that my supporters that financially, but also everybody in town. Today we're going to come together and we are going to build the best possible Taylor that we can.
Yeah.
It may take a little time because it doesn't happen overnight,
Mm-hmm.
but give us the opportunity, give us your input.
Yeah.
Let's do it. The last time that the seat I'm in and ran, 305 people voted. That's it. All of District 1, 305 people voted. And so I want to reach as many people as possible and say, look, come out and vote, because we don't want less than 10% to tell what 20% of the city can do.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I'm trying to do, by going out and talking to as many people as I can and knocking all the doors, is the simple fact that we have a voice,
Right.
and you will have a voice on the dais. And I want to happen here in the next 6 months or so is I want people to look and say, this is our city council.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it in the past where people go, this is our city council. Same
Mm-hmm.
words, totally different meaning. I want people to be proud of the people they put up there on the dais, the ones that are going to work for them, in each district, and also to bring in businesses and families and to come in here and work. Because I talked to some people that said, if I can make $2 less an hour because I'm always gone here in Taylor than I do in Austin, I can have 20 more hours a week to do things here in Taylor.
Right.
Because
and probably, well, the gas price too. I mean, right? Just the commute pricing, the lunch savings, right?
Yeah. Because my last 2.5 years when I worked for the city of Austin, we lived in Taylor.
Yeah.
So it was, it was 37 minutes to work.
Wow.
And then 47 back.
Right.
But when I lived in Round Rock, it was 22 minutes to work.
Right.
But it could be 2.5 hours back on the drive.
Depending on where you're at. Yeah.
Because, straight up 35, it was always, you never knew what you were going to get driving up 35 or even doing the toll road.
Mm-hmm.
But more time at home means more stronger families, family time, getting out there with your kids, going to the ball games, going out to eat, and spending your money here, which is the tax base. But if we can get those businesses to come in also, we can bring in tax base from outside. We can raise our tax base by people spending their money here that don't live here.
Right.
And that's raising the taxes not on the backs of the citizens, but on the product that we put out.
Absolutely. And that's huge. And as we kind of wrap up today, another word that I love to talk about as you talk about, that this is our city, is the word pride. There's two big differences in that word, and there's two very different ways that we can use it. Pride could be used in a way of arrogance and separation, or
One
pride,
of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, or pride can be, I'm proud of what I created. I'm excited. I'm grateful. I am humbled by the fruit that we've all established together, right? And I feel like maybe because of the negative connotation of pride, we've lost the beauty of the word pride as well. And as a community, to have that unity, before we can be proud of something, we need to be unified towards it, right? If a company has employees and the employees aren't unified, they're not proud of what they're producing. If a family isn't unified, they're not proud necessarily to carry that family name. And if a community is not unified, are they proud of the name Taylor, Texas, when they drive into it every single day, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you?
Being proud is enjoying and working with your hands or doing something and the fruit that you produce.
Yeah.
When I built our business, I built it by hand.
Yeah.
Out there, the surfaces, the electrical, the fence, put up some of the structures. I didn't put the real tall structures because I just don't bounce the way I used to. But when we opened the doors and we had customers come in, and they want to store their vehicles with us in
Yeah.
their mobile homes and their boats, it takes pride to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, you got to have the drive to do it, to be a independent business owner,
Sure.
but it's not about the business. It's about the service that we give.
It's what you
And
produce.
you know, somebody goes, well, you protected the country. You'll definitely protect my RV.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I like that concept, but
Yeah.
you know, being proud of who you are and where you're from is something that we all should strive for.
Yeah.
I want people to go, hey, what's happening here? Man, y'all are from Taylor. Y'all got some great stuff there, and everything that goes on with all
Yeah.
the organizations that give back and the community organizations that we have here. I am proud to
Mm.
say that, our Rotary Club is working for giving scholarships to kids, and we do a scholars banquet to honor the first 10% or the top 10% of all the Taylor graduates and their parents.
Mm.
You got the Lions Club that does vision, and that's an important thing. If kids are in school and they don't have the glasses,
Right.
and you can't read the board, they have such an issue of doing it. We do. We're They're bagging right now at Shepherd's Heart. I miss that because I'm here
Because
for
you're
this,
here.
here to
Oh.
this. But I called out for all hands, and we got people that showed up to do it. And feeding our kids and feeding our youth is really we got to be proud to do that, because
Mhm.
a child that misses a meal
Mhm.
on after they leave school on Friday
They don't eat till Monday.
and they don't eat till Monday, their brain doesn't have the nutrients until about Wednesday to start learning again. So they
Mm.
miss 40% of what's going on in school because their brains are trying to catch up from the food they left.
Incredible.
Let's
Yeah.
let's give back to the food pantry. Let's give back. And I've seen that happen in Taylor, and that's what I want to continue to see happen with the companies that we bring in and the people that we bring in. Said, this is where we live. This is where we have to make it
Yeah.
happen.
Absolutely. I think in order for pride to be established, you have to show up.
Yeah.
And as you talked earlier about voting, you have to show up. If you want to see the change, if you want to be part of the change, if you want to be proud of what's produced, you have to show up. And so, a call to arms to everybody in the Taylor community, and in whatever community you're in, because our podcast reaches people all over the world, right? Whatever your community you're in, these principles still stay the same, right? We are more united than we are different. We are that 80% more in commonality or in common ground than we are different, right? We are, striving for those same basic needs and desires. And we all want to see our legacy, our generation be able to benefit from what we put our hands to today. And when we look at what divides people, it's usually those same things. That's still what they want. They want the next generation. How they go about it, maybe a little bit different, right?
That's true.
But at the same time, at the end of the day, we want to produce and sit back and be proud of what came. And Greg, I am not in District 1.
Okay.
However,
I know you've got my sign in
I
your
have
yard.
your
Yes.
sign. Yes, I have your sign in my yard because I am a fan, and I am proud to call you a friend, and happy to have you here with us today. And I wish you all the luck with what you do, but you don't need luck because you've got God's grace all over you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I know from the bottom of my heart that whatever the results show on the board today, you're a Taylorite. You're in the community, and you're going to give your 5,000,000% regardless of the outcome. It's just, your voice gets amplified a little bit more if you're on that seat, and I'm believing for that seat for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I've always been told my voice carries quite a bit. I'll talk low, and somebody goes, "Man, I can hear you all the way over here." I said, "That's great because I can't hear anything right now." I spent some of my time in the military was on jets and helicopters and working on the flight line.
Wow.
And trust me, you can't hear after that.
Sure.
Most of the veterans I know can't hear
Yeah.
because of what they did in life.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to serving the city of Taylor and District 1 and getting things together for everybody as we move forward. Because, like you said, we're in the middle of what's called the Golden Triangle between Houston and San Antonio and Dallas, and we're going to grow. And do
Right.
we want to? And we need smart growth. Do we want to grow and be the industrial part of the county just by having factories in here and people coming in and working here and leaving and not spending their money?
And having
Or
a horribly ugly downtown. Like, no,
yes,
that's not what we want,
no,
right?
we want people to come in and spend their money and do stuff. You know, come in here and go, oh my God, look at the old high school, old Taylor
Yeah.
High. What a great place to go. And coming downtown and walking around and doing things and, you know, going and visiting what we have. The Moody Museum is really a neat story if you go over there.
Yeah.
People probably don't realize that Merrill Block lived here. He
Yeah.
went to Taylor, and anybody at my generations knows that he did most of the sounds for, you know, for who Donald Duck and
Yeah. Yeah.
and Bugs Bunny. So that's what we have here. And
Wow.
and
Yeah.
Dan Mooney himself, everything he did for the nation and for the state,
Right.
what is we've got some history here.
Right.
If we get the Howard Theater back up and running again, what a great place to do. And just to have an open area the way we have downtown.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I,
Well, I'll tell you what brought us to Taylor in 2014. We were,
so we got here about the same time.
oh,
We
really?
we moved here in August of 14.
Oh my gosh. I think we were September of
September.
14.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. But what brought us is at that time, I think I was the president of the Lions Club. I think that was the year. And I was involved in the chamber as an ambassador chair or something during that time. And Royal and I, we lived in Elgin, and we had, worked in Taylor. I was managing a bank. We had our business in Manor, and church was in Elgin. So we were kind of like all over the place. But because of my position at the bank, I was the branch manager. I had to be involved in all of the activities. And I'll say, got to, enjoyed being involved in, because it's a joy, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege. And I remember that 4th of July, we had the 4th of July parade, and I was in the pancake eating contest. I was in the dunking booth. And something else, like, because I was voluntold for all of those things.
That's a
And
military term. You know that, right?
yeah, well, I didn't know that, but
Yeah.
it makes sense. Yeah. And I just remember this feeling of community just overwhelmed me when I was sitting at the Murphy Park that day, and I told Royal, I looked over at him and I said, we've got to move to Taylor, babe. And we had this battle, for a little while before at that point. But so I called my friend and I said, Lisa, is your house for sale? And she says, well, it's going to be. I just moved to Louisiana. I said, well, I'm going to buy it. And she goes, Tracy, you've never even been to my house. I said, I don't care. It's on Lake Drive and I want to live in Taylor. And so I'm going to do it. And she was like, you're crazy, but I'll send you my attorney, or not my attorney, my realtor. Greg, it's a crazy story, but that house became ours.
God has a plan. We don't understand what it is.
Yeah.
When the house that we bought, we'd looked at it early on and we were like, okay, we'll make an offer. And then they lowered it a couple times, but it wasn't what we were looking for. And Rhonda and I were actually halfway to the coast for a charity fishing tournament with the fire department.
Yeah.
They called us and says, if Greg and Rhonda want that house, it goes on the market Monday. They need to put their money down today. So we turned around, drove back, signed the paperwork, wrote a check, and then we came back, and that's how we ended up in Taylor.
Wow.
And Rhonda goes, God wanted you to have this house.
Yeah.
I said, are you sure? She goes, it's Taylor. And I'm like, and we've had such a great time here.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's just a wonderful place. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what the next 10 years brings
Absolutely.
to Taylor, and then the 10 years after that.
Wow.
But being a public servant is truly who I am. I at the church I go to, I work the doors, and somebody goes, of course you do. I mean, the kids come in and the little kids love to hop up in my arms so they can look down at their parents.
Be like, I'm taller than you.
Yeah, I'm taller than you now.
Yeah.
This is a great view from up here, Dad. You should try it one day. But it's just, it's being a part of a community, and it's not even being known. It's just being a part of the community. You could be the smallest part, or you could be the biggest part, but it's just like you said, get involved.
Yeah.
One of the things that Rhonda and I do for 4th of July is we pull our float with our for our business, and then we park in front of the Legion and we start cutting up watermelons. Well,
Aw.
the first year we did that, we cut up 4 and we cut them up in quarters and passed them out. This past year, we cut up 10 and we had to cut them in wagon wheels, 6 pieces per slice because we have that many more people. And
Aw.
this year's probably going to be even bigger
Sure.
because we've got 3 bands this year for
Mm.
the 4th of July to be able to come out and spend time in the park and
Mm.
enjoy the independence of the country.
Yeah.
And then we got the fireworks at
And
night.
it's the most beautiful place to enjoy it. So, for those of you who maybe don't live in Taylor yet, you need to come move to Taylor. And perhaps if you move to Taylor before Election Day, you can go ahead and give a vote.
It's a little late. That was on the 3rd was the last day you could early vote.
Okay.
I've talked to a lot of people that said, if I just lived in your district, I said, well, if I can get about 50 more people to live in my guest house, I could get more votes. But no, it's get out and vote. That's your best. That's our right.
Yeah.
And that's who you can actually decide who you want to support you and be your representative and be your voice.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be. I want to be a voice for A, District 1, but then B, for all of Taylor.
Yeah.
To be able to come in, because I tell people I have truly thick skin. I mean, all the stereotypes that you see through Marine Corps Basic and through all the movies, and goes, that doesn't really happen. Well, yeah, it does. It did. It did when I went through. When I was in '84. Trust me, it does happen.
Yeah.
And
for such a time as this, you've been prepared.
That's what I was told. Everything I've done in my life up to now has prepared me to make this run and to do this job.
Yeah.
But people can say anything they want to online. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And that's really when you're walking in purpose.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Some people get confused with purpose and vocation. Vocation is where we're able to make money and provide for our families, but usually purpose is attached to the legacy that we're leaving, who it is that we're able to make an impact and impart in for future. And that's what you're doing today. And it's such an honor to sit back and watch it and, get as actively involved. So this is my active involvement.
Well, I appreciate that. A lot of times people talk about when we pass, and it's like you go to a cemetery and you see the 2 dates, but it's the dash in the middle.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, make your dash count.
Make it count.
And I was talking to one guy, and we were talking about death and stuff. And the guy goes, I want to be buried with a fork. I'm like, why? He goes, anytime you go out to eat and you're doing stuff and they tell you to keep your fork, something better's coming. So be buried with a fork because something better's coming.
And he's ready to get that manna, that bread from heaven when he gets home. Yeah, I love
quail.
it.
Quail's always good.
Yeah. Well, Greg, thank you for joining me today.
I'm so pleased to be able to come here and sit with you. I've really enjoyed our time and getting to know you and Royal a little better. Is always, it's the best part about doing some of this stuff is actually getting to spend more time with people in town.
Yeah. Well, get ready, guys. You're going to get to see a lot more of Greg. It almost seems impossible because he's been everywhere. He's been doing everything, but now he's going to be doing it in a higher capacity to represent you, citizens of Taylor, Texas. And what happens in Taylor happens in Williamson County. What happens in Williamson County affects the world. So guess what? Your voice really does matter. So get out there and use it. And together we will build and continue to build on that community called Taylor, Texas, that we are all very proud